You're stronger than any man I've ever loved." The words dropped from the top of the staircase like a hammer in a quiet chapel, unexpected, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Cory Jackson paused, his fingers gripping the base of a mid-century sofa. The thing weighed like it was made of bricks, not cushions, but he held it steady on the third step, his boot braced against the wooden trim. He looked up slowly, not just because the voice startled him, but because it meant something he wasn't ready for. What could those words possibly mean? Stay tuned with BUP Stories to find out. Evelyn Hart stood barefoot at the landing above, one hand resting lightly on the banister, the other on the curve of her hip, where a soft slate blue dress clung to her body like it had been poured onto her skin. The dress was simple, sleeveless, hemmed just above the knee, but it hugged every line of her, from her narrow waist to the gentle rise of her chest, like it was tailored for temptation. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose knot, her pale skin catching the amber light from the hallway window. There was nothing careless about her posture, nothing accidental about her gaze. Cory didn't answer right away. He shifted the sofa with a grunt, eased it onto the fourth step, then wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "That right," he said, voice low, almost unreadable. Evelyn tilted her head, a faint smile flickering across her lips. "Just an observation. Will Cory take the bait, or is this just the start of something deeper?" Keep watching BUP Stories to uncover the truth. He didn't respond, just bent again, lifted the sofa, and carried it down the rest of the stairs, jaw set. He didn't have time to decode whatever game this was. He was here to move furniture, not navigate the fog of a woman wrapped in silk and sadness. Inside the living room, he slid the sofa against the wall beneath the wide window. Golden light spread across the floor like spilled honey. The house smelled like wood polish and books left closed too long. Cory stepped back, checking the angle, hands on his hips. Evelyn entered behind him, the soft padding of her bare feet nearly silent on the floor. The dress moved with her, slow, deliberate, like water finding the path of least resistance. "You can leave it there," she said. He nodded, bent to adjust the legs, then stood up again. "Anything else you want moved before I head out? You always this efficient? I get paid by the job, not the hour." "That's not what I asked." He gave her a half look. "I've done this a while." "I can tell," she said, like she could tell a lot more than that. Cory's eyes flicked toward the kitchen where two cardboard boxes sat near the pantry. One was labeled China, the other memories. The corner of the second box was split open. Inside, he saw a faded photo in a silver frame. He didn't ask. Evelyn's voice softened. "I haven't touched those yet. Not my business." She stepped closer, arms crossed now under her chest, pressing the fabric of her dress tighter against her figure. "You don't talk much, do you?" "No need to." He walked to the front door and grabbed his dolly. The afternoon sun had started its descent, casting long slants across the porch. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower buzzed faintly. Someone's radio played old country through a screen window. "You want a glass of water before you go?" she asked. He didn't turn. "I'm good." "Dinner then?" That made him stop, hand on the side door of his truck. He turned his head just enough to catch her silhouette in the doorway. "I made enough for two," she said. "And I'd rather not eat alone in a house that creaks like it's haunted." He faced her. She hadn't moved. That same slow, deliberate posture, barefoot in that dress, with eyes that didn't blink when she talked to him, like they were already in the middle of something unspoken. "Clients don't usually offer dinner," he said. "Most clients don't watch a man carry a dresser like it's a shoebox." He studied her, taking in the calm confidence in her stance, the way she held his gaze like it didn't cost her anything. "I don't cross that line." "What line?" "The one between work and whatever this is." Her smile was subtle, but her tone stayed quiet, grounded. "I'm not asking you for whatever, Cory. I'm asking if you'd like to eat." The air hung still between them. 1 second. 2. 3. He exhaled slowly. "Thanks, but I got another job." A lie? Or maybe just an excuse? She didn't argue, just gave him a small nod and stepped back inside. He climbed into the truck and turned the key. The engine started. As he pulled out of the driveway, he checked the mirror. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, backlit by the hallway light, not smiling, not waiting, just watching. By the time Cory reached Providence Road, her voice was still echoing. "You're stronger than any man I've ever loved." It wasn't the compliment that got to him. It was the way she said it, like it wasn't about muscles or what he carried in his arms, but what he carried in silence. And as he parked behind the barbershop that doubled as his apartment building, that line stayed with him longer than the weight of any furniture ever had. The next evening, Cory sat alone at his kitchen table, the hum of the old refrigerator filling the room. His dinner, leftover meatloaf and canned green beans, sat untouched. The fork in his hand hovered, then slowly dropped with a quiet clink against the chipped ceramic plate. He wasn't hungry. Not really. His phone lit up, a text from an unknown number. Asterisk leftover chicken soup. Still warm. Unless the ghosts drank it, asterisk Evelyn. Cory stared at the screen for a long second, thumb twitching, then turned the phone face down like it burned. He didn't like crossing lines. Never had. Whether it was the chain of command in the Marines or the unspoken boundary between clients and contractors, he stuck to his lanes. That's how you lasted. That's how you stayed out of trouble. But that woman, she didn't fit in any lane. And damn, if her voice hadn't followed him into his dreams last night. 20 minutes later, Cory was back in his truck. He told himself it was because he left his dolly on her porch, even though he knew damn well it was already in the truck bed. He told himself maybe she just needed help with another box. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe he was. Maybe it was just soup. He parked in the same spot. The house looked warmer this time, lamplight spilling through the front windows, a faint shadow moving behind the sheer curtains. He knocked. Evelyn opened the door like she'd been waiting, wearing a different dress, still close-fitting, but casual, soft red cotton that curved around her waist and dropped just past her knees. She was barefoot again. "Took you long enough," she said, already turning toward the kitchen. "I didn't say I was coming." "You didn't have to." He stepped inside. The scent of garlic, rosemary, and simmered chicken drew him forward like gravity. The kitchen had changed. Candles flickered on the windowsill. 2 bowls already on the table, steam curling upward like ribbon. She'd set out cornbread too, sliced into neat squares on a ceramic plate. "You didn't have to go through the trouble," he said. "It wasn't trouble. I needed to cook, and I figured, well, you didn't exactly run from me last time." He pulled out a chair. "Didn't stay either. You did enough." They sat. She poured water into his glass. He nodded a thank you. The first spoonful of soup silenced every excuse in his head. It was homemade rich broth, tender vegetables, herbs that clung to the tongue just right. Comfort disguised as food. "You said you had another job," she said quietly, not looking at him. "I didn't lie, just didn't say when." "Still got your boots on. That means you haven't sat down all day." "I sit down now." She gave him a small, satisfied smile. They ate without talking for a while. Not an awkward silence, just peaceful, like they were letting the soup say what didn't need to be spoken. Eventually, Evelyn leaned back, cradling her glass between both palms. "This place feels different at night. Quieter. Lonelier." Cory nodded. "Big houses do that. My mom used to say, walls don't keep you company. Just your thoughts." "Smart woman." He nodded again, then added, "Raised me and my 2 brothers by herself. Kept a baseball bat behind the door and a cross over the stove." Evelyn laughed, soft and surprised. "Sounds like a southern mama." She was. "What about now?" She passed. Lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life, but she cleaned offices where people did. "You know how that goes." Her expression shifted, deeper, softer. "I'm sorry." Cory shrugged. "Life's got its own clock." A beat of silence stretched between them. Evelyn reached for another slice of cornbread but paused, her fingers hovering. "Can I ask you something?" He gestured with his spoon. "That usually means you already are. What happened to your hand?" He blinked. "Which one?" She pointed at his right, just above the wrist. A pale scar arched like a crescent moon. "Shrapnel," he said simply. She waited. "Fallujah, 2009. Guy in our unit tripped a buried shell." "I was close." "You don't talk about it much, do you?" "Not unless I need to." "And right now?" Cory stirred his soup. "Right now, I just want to finish this cornbread while it's warm." Evelyn nodded, respectful. That mattered to him. When they finished eating, she cleared the bowls, and he offered to help, but she waved him off. "You already carried my past up 2 flights of stairs," she said with a half-smile. "Least I can do is handle dishes." He stood near the doorway, watching her work. The dress shifted with each move, outlining her silhouette as she reached for a towel, her bare feet silent on the tile. There was grace in her body, but something wounded too, like someone who'd once trusted the wrong arms and paid for it in years. Not bruises. "You ever fix things?" she asked without turning. "Depends. Not furniture. I mean people." "Nah." "Why not?" "Because people don't break clean." She paused, holding a glass in the sink. The sound of running water filled the space between them. "I didn't invite you here to be fixed," she said after a moment. "I didn't come here to fix anything." She turned then, slowly, towel in hand. "Then why did you come?" Cory didn't answer right away. He looked down at his boots, then back up at her. "Because I don't like the idea of someone eating soup alone in a house that creaks." Her mouth curved. "That's a good reason." "No, it's not," he said. "But it's the honest one." She folded the towel. "You want coffee?" "I shouldn't stay long." "I didn't ask if you'd move in." He huffed a quiet breath, maybe not a laugh, but close. She made coffee in a French press. He watched the ritual pour, stir, press like it was something sacred. When she handed him the mug, their fingers brushed, and for a second, the air between them changed, thicker, warmer. They sat on the living room floor, backs against opposite ends of the sofa he'd carried in the day before. Outside, the wind picked up. A loose shutter knocked softly against the house. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The coffee cooled between sips. Finally, Evelyn broke the quiet. "Do you always carry things for other people?" Cory tilted his head. "Only if they're worth it." She didn't respond, but she didn't look away. When he stood to leave, she didn't walk him to the door. She just said, "Sunday, 10 o'clock. There's more soup." He nodded once, and this time when he walked out, her voice didn't echo. It stayed. Sunday morning arrived slow and silver, wrapped in low clouds and the scent of wet leaves. Charlotte had rained lightly through the night, and now the pavement glistened as if polished by memory. Cory Jackson sat on the edge of his bed, lacing his boots with the kind of calm deliberation reserved for men who didn't rush much anymore. He didn't check his phone. He didn't need to. He remembered her words. Sunday, 10 o'clock, there's more soup. He didn't know if it was an invitation or just a passing offer. He didn't know if he was supposed to show up or if it had been the kind of line people threw out to be polite. But what he did know was this: he hadn't stopped thinking about her. Not her dress, not even the way she said his name. It was the quiet, the kind of silence that didn't push or pull, just let him be. At 9:58 a.m., he parked across the street from Evelyn Hart's house. It looked different in the morning, less cinematic, more real. The hedges still trimmed, the shutters still painted perfectly gray-blue, but the mailbox was slightly crooked, and one of the porch steps had a soft creak he hadn't noticed before. Imperfections. The kind you only saw when you cared enough to look. He knocked gently. No answer. He waited. Then the door opened. Evelyn stood in the doorway, barefoot again, hair damp from the shower, tied into a lazy knot. She wore a simple cream sweater that hung slightly off one shoulder and a pair of dark leggings. No makeup, no perfume, just her. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, stepping aside. "You said 10. I also say a lot of things when I'm nervous." He stepped in. The house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. "You nervous now?" he asked. Evelyn didn't answer. She just led him to the kitchen where two mugs sat beside a half-empty French press. "I made cinnamon rolls from a can," she added quickly. "Let's not romanticize it." Cory picked one up and took a bite. "Still counts." They sat at the small table beside the window. The rain had left drops clinging to the glass, distorting the street view just enough to make everything look softer. "Did you ever think you'd be here?" she asked suddenly. He glanced up. "Where?" "In a woman's kitchen at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, eating canned cinnamon rolls and drinking cheap coffee." "Nah," he said. She smiled. "Me neither." For a while, they just sat, the air between them calm and a little warm from the oven. It felt like a truce between expectation and reality, between the wounds they didn't talk about and the quiet comfort of knowing someone else didn't need the whole story to understand the weight. At 10:47, a notification buzzed on Cory's phone. He ignored it. Evelyn noticed. "You don't get many days off, do you?" "I work when there's work. Makes the rest of the week easier to sleep through." "That's a heavy way to live." "I'm used to heavy." Her gaze softened. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Cory leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "Nobody's lining up to help." "I didn't say it'd be a line," she replied quietly. "Just maybe one person." They let that hang. No one rushed to fill the silence. That was something Cory noticed about her. She wasn't afraid of quiet. Most people were. They needed to talk, to explain, to smooth things over. Evelyn just waited, like stillness was her language. Outside, a car slowed near the curb. A silver sedan, late model, clean. It didn't stop, just lingered before pulling away. Cory noticed. Evelyn didn't. "You expecting someone?" "No." "You ever been watched?" he asked. Evelyn froze mid-pour. "Why?" "Car outside didn't look like it belonged." She shook her head. "Probably someone lost. This neighborhood's a maze." He didn't argue, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he sipped the fresh cup. They talked about little things after that. Childhood pets, first cars. Cory's was a rusted '96 Ford Ranger with a door that never closed right. Evelyn had a hand-me-down Subaru from her cousin in Raleigh. They laughed at the same spots. That surprised her more than it surprised him. Near noon, he stood. "You leaving?" "Yeah." "You want to take some soup?" "Nah. I didn't come for the soup." That made her stop. She leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. "Then why did you come?" He looked at her, not dodging this time. "Because this feels like something that's not asking me to be more than I am." She nodded once. No smile, just understanding. Cory stepped toward the door, and that's when it happened. Flash. Not inside. Outside. He moved fast, 3 steps to the curtain, peeled it back just enough. Across the street, a man with a camera ducked behind a car. "What the hell?" Cory muttered. Evelyn was beside him in a breath. "What is it?" "Someone just took our picture." She blinked. "What? Are you sure?" "I don't guess when it comes to people pointing lenses at my face." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Steven?" "Who?" "My ex-husband. He still has friends. One of them works in media." Cory stared at her. "You think they're watching you?" "They're watching us." Silence. Heavy now. "You want me to handle it?" he asked. "No. That's what they want. They want a scene." "Then what do you want?" She hesitated. I want to see if you'll still come back next Sunday. Cory looked down, then at her again. I'm not scared of cameras, he said. But I don't perform for them either. She touched his arm, just briefly. I'm not asking you to perform. Just to show up. He nodded, opened the door, stepped out. The sidewalk was clear now. The car gone. The photo, if it had been taken, already on someone's drive. As he walked back to his truck, he looked back once. She was still at the doorway, barefoot, arms folded, the light from inside tracing the edges of her sweater. He didn't wave, but he didn't look away either. And Evelyn, she didn't blink. Not once. The photo was online by midnight. It wasn't on a gossip blog. Not yet. It appeared in a quiet corner of a local real estate Facebook group, posted by a burner account with no friends, no history, and a single caption, "Guess she's moved on fast." The image was blurry, taken from across the street, but clear enough to catch Cory's profile through Evelyn's kitchen window. He was mid-laugh, coffee mug in hand, her hand lightly resting on the table beside him. The moment looked intimate, even tender, manufactured for implication. What secrets are hiding behind this photo? Stay with BUP Stories to uncover the full story. Evelyn saw it first. She didn't message Cory, didn't warn him. She just stared at it on her laptop for a long time, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. Her first instinct was fear. Her second was anger. The third was something else entirely: resolve. By Monday morning, she was pacing in her living room, wrapped in a charcoal gray robe, her phone pressed to her ear. "Janine," she said, keeping her voice low. "He's back. Steven. Someone working for him. I know his tactics. He plants stories in local groups before going wide." A pause on the other end. "Jesus, Eve, I thought the settlement had a clause about this." "It did. But enforcement means court, and court means cameras, and that's exactly what he wants." Janine sighed. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. But Cory's not going to be once this spreads." "You think he cares what some rich boy thinks?" "I think he's worked too hard to stay invisible." "A beat. Do you want me to call Marcus? He can dig around. Maybe trace the account." Evelyn paused. "Not yet. There's someone I need to talk to first." Cory was halfway through replacing brake pads at the back lot of Randall's Auto when he saw the car pull up. It wasn't Evelyn's silver sedan. This was a black SUV, late model, tinted windows, low idle. He didn't flinch, just kept working until the engine cut off and the door opened. The man who stepped out wore an expensive coat and cheap cologne. Tall, trim, mid-40s. The kind of man who moved like he expected the world to make space for him. "You Cory Jackson?" he asked, voice clipped. Cory didn't bother standing. "Depends who's asking." "I'm Stephen Hart." The wrench in Cory's hand stopped mid-turn. "I believe you've met my wife," Stephen added. Cory stood now. Not quickly, not slow either, just deliberate. "Ex-wife," Cory corrected. Stephen smirked. "Ah, so she told you." "Told me enough." There was a pause. Then Stephen glanced around the lot. "You do good work. Clean, efficient." Evelyn always liked men who could fix things. Cory said nothing. Stephen stepped closer. "I saw the picture. You two looked cozy. Got something you want to say, Mr. Hart?" Stephen folded his arms. "Just this." Evelyn's confused. "She's vulnerable. And you? You're convenient. But this won't last." Cory didn't blink. "You take that picture? Let's just say I have people. People who protect my interests. You think she's your interest?" "She's still legally tied to me in ways that matter." Cory stepped forward, his voice low. "You show up again, here, at her house, anywhere she's breathing, I'm not going to talk next time." Stephen's eyes flashed. Was that a threat? No, Cory said. That was a warning. Stephen hesitated, just long enough, then turned without a word, climbed back into his SUV, and drove off without looking back. Cory stood there for a full minute, the air thick with something old, something heavy. He hadn't fought anyone in a long time. Not since his discharge, not since he promised his mama he wouldn't let his fists do what his words could. But men like Stephen made it hard to remember that line. That night, Evelyn knocked on Cory's door. He lived above a barbershop on Main, second floor walk-up, no elevator, no frills. She climbed the stairs in a dark trench coat, her hair pulled back, no makeup, just intention. When he opened the door, she didn't speak right away, just looked at him, looked for something. "You saw the post?" he asked. She nodded. "And I know who took it. I met him today." She tensed. "Stephen." Cory stepped back, letting her in. "Came to my shop, told me I was a phase." Evelyn exhaled hard. "I'm so sorry. You don't have to apologize for a man like that. He's the one who doesn't know how to let go." She looked at him, eyes wet but unbroken. "He's not just trying to ruin me. He's trying to ruin you, too. He can't ruin what he didn't build." Evelyn moved to the window, arms crossed tight against her chest. "He used to say I'd never make it on my own, that no one would take me seriously without his last name. He lied. I know that now, but sometimes the lie sticks deeper than the truth." Cory walked over, standing just behind her, not touching, just close enough to matter. "I'm not afraid of your past," he said. "But I need to know if you are." She turned to face him, the streetlights casting soft amber over her cheekbones. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "I'm just tired." He reached up slowly, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, then rested there. And for a long moment, neither of them moved. No kiss, no rush, just the quiet understanding of two people who had been cracked open too many times, finding shelter in one another's silence. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft, steady, unbothered. The invitation arrived the next morning, neatly folded into an envelope slid under Cory's apartment door. It wasn't a letter, wasn't even typed, just a crisp white card with gold trim and 7 handwritten words, * dinner at Evelyn's. Just us. No cameras. He * at first, Cory didn't know what to make of it. He turned it over, looked for anything else. Nothing. No name, no signature, just her handwriting, small, elegant, direct. She didn't need to add her name. He knew the curve of that J in just too well now. He stood by the door for a while, card in one hand, coffee mug in the other, his mind flicking back to the night before, the way her voice cracked when she said she was tired, the softness in her eyes when he said, "Rest here." But this felt different, not emotional, not reactive, intentional. He showered, shaved, and pulled on his cleanest dark jeans and a button-up shirt he hadn't worn in months. He didn't know why he cared. He just did. When he knocked on her door at 6 o'clock, Evelyn answered almost immediately, like she'd been waiting just on the other side. She wore a dark green silk dress, tight at the waist, soft at the shoulders, with a slit that didn't try to hide. Her lips were glossed, but her eyes were bare. Honest. Open. "You came," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "You invited." She stepped aside, and he entered. The living room looked different tonight, dimmer, more lived in. Candles burned on the mantel, and low jazz hummed from an old speaker by the bookshelf. The boxes were gone. The table was set for 2 real china, silver forks, cloth napkins folded like hotel corners. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "I did it for me," she replied, then added, "but I hoped it'd be for us." He nodded, and she motioned him toward the kitchen. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, rosemary potatoes, grilled asparagus, no takeout, no frozen shortcuts. She cooked like someone trying to rebuild something old with new hands. They ate slowly, no rush, no script. The conversation wandered through books, old movies, and favorite diners from their childhood towns. Cory learned that Evelyn's father died in a car accident when she was 12. She learned that Cory once fixed a piano with duct tape and kept it tuned for 3 more years. Then she set her fork down and asked, "Can I show you something?" He looked up, surprised. Sure. She rose from her seat, barefoot again, and disappeared down the hall. When she returned, she was holding a photo album, leather-bound, worn at the edges. This is from before Stephen, she said, sitting beside him on the couch, closer than before. Before all the noise. She flipped it open. Childhood birthdays, high school prom, her college graduation in Boston, standing alone in a blue gown on a windy rooftop. Cory didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just watched, listened, and nodded when it felt right. Then she paused at a photo halfway through, her at 21, barefoot in a kitchen much smaller than this one, laughing with a woman who looked just like her, but older, softer. My mom, she said. She used to tell me, Evelyn, don't waste your good years trying to impress people who wouldn't call you if your car broke down. That's a wise woman, Cory murmured. She died a month after this, Evelyn said, tapping the corner of the photo. Heart gave out in her sleep. No warning, no time to say anything. Cory reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. She let him hold it. I think that's when I started accepting half-love, she whispered. Stephen. He wasn't cruel, not at first, just cold, distant, but I thought that was normal. I thought maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like laughter in small kitchens. Cory's thumb traced a small circle over her knuckles. You don't have to explain anything to me. I want to, she said, because last night when you said I could rest here, I wanted to believe you meant it. That I wasn't just another assignment to finish and forget. He looked into her eyes, deep and vulnerable in a way that made the air feel heavier. You're not an assignment, he said. Not to me. Her breath caught. She leaned in slowly, unsure, like a woman trying to remember how to trust her instincts. And when their lips met, it wasn't a spark. It was a sigh, a quiet exhale of all the fear and fight they'd been carrying. They stayed like that for a moment, connected, not consumed. Then she pulled back slightly, forehead still resting against his. I don't want this to be fast, she said. Neither do I. They didn't talk much after that, just sat together, her head on his shoulder, his hand wrapped around hers, listening to the soft crackle of the record player and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Outside, the world moved on. Somewhere, someone might have been taking another photo. Somewhere, Stephen Hart might have been scrolling through his contacts, planning his next move. But inside that house, on that night, two people who had been cracked open by life found something that felt like quiet strength. And for once, that was enough. What happens when the world outside starts closing in? Don't miss the next chapter on BUP Stories. The next morning brought sunlight through Evelyn's kitchen windows, but neither of them had touched the breakfast she made. Toast sat cold on ceramic plates. The coffee, poured hours ago, remained half-sipped. Evelyn stood by the window, arms folded tight across her chest, while Cory stared down at the photo on her phone, his jaw clenched so hard it looked carved. It was a picture of the two of them last night, sitting on her couch, too close to be platonic, her head on his shoulder, his hand holding hers. The image was grainy, as if taken from a distance through a window. Who the hell would, Cory started but stopped when Evelyn flinched. There's only one person who'd want to shake me like this, she said. Stephen. Cory looked up. You think he's been watching the house? She nodded slowly, her voice hollow. Or hired someone to. He took the phone and zoomed in, analyzing every shadow. This was taken from outside through glass, probably across the street. Evelyn turned, bracing her hands against the counter like it was the only thing holding her up. He's not just trying to rattle me. He's trying to bait me, to make me scared, to remind me that I'm still in his chess game. Cory stepped forward, his voice even but hard. Then we call it out. Publicly, legally. No, she said, too fast. That's what he wants. If I make noise, he'll flip the narrative, say I'm unstable, emotional. He'll twist the story, make it seem like I'm the one losing control. You really think the world would believe him over you? She let out a bitter laugh. Cory, he owns media shares in 5 different states. He plays golf with senators. He can bury the truth under headlines and lawsuits. Cory exhaled slowly and looked around the room. Then his eyes fell on something, an old camera on the bookshelf. He wants to scare you, not expose you, which means he still thinks he has something to lose. She blinked. Like what? Control, Cory said. Power over your name, your silence, and maybe over your inheritance. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. You think this is about the trust fund? You told me Stephen was managing it, that you hadn't looked into the accounts for over a year. Her mouth parted slightly. You think he's been moving the money? I think it's time we find out. They didn't go to the police. Not yet. Instead, Cory called someone, an old friend named Malik, a retired financial investigator who now lived in Brooklyn and owed Cory a favor from years back. That evening, Malik agreed to fly out to California on the next available flight. He's quiet, Cory told Evelyn as they stood by the window, watching the sun bleed into the hills. And he doesn't leave a digital footprint. We'll get answers without tipping Stephen off. Evelyn nodded, but her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve. That night, Cory slept on the couch again, even though Evelyn didn't ask him to. She lay awake in her room, the photo still imprinted behind her eyelids. She hadn't told Cory everything. Not yet. She hadn't told him about the security code Stephen still had access to, or the one time, 4 months ago, when she came home and the vase on the hallway table was turned just slightly, the kind of shift that meant nothing to most people but everything to a woman trained to remember how her world looked before it was invaded. The next morning, Malik arrived, sharp suit, crisp voice, eyes that missed nothing. He sat up in the dining room, laptop open, files spread like a war map. Evelyn handed him access to her accounts, and within an hour, his face went still. You're missing over 250 grand, he said, pointing to flagged transfers. He's been routing funds through 3 shell companies, all tied to one firm in Nevada. Quiet, legal looking, but the money's gone. Evelyn stared at the screen. Can we trace it back to him? Malik gave her a small, grim smile. Eventually, but it'll take finesse and time. He's good. Not good enough, Cory said under his breath. For the next 2 days, they worked in silence, Malik chasing digital threads, Cory double-checking locks and cameras around the house, Evelyn sorting old documents, bills, statements she hadn't dared to look at in months. But it wasn't until the 3rd morning that something cracked. Evelyn came downstairs in a rush, barefoot, robe loose over a tank top, holding a manila envelope she'd just retrieved from the mailbox. There's no return address, she said, breath shaky. Inside the envelope were 2 things, a printed photo, this time of her and Cory in the kitchen 2 nights ago, laughing as she held a wine glass, and a small USB drive. They all stared at it. Could be anything, Malik warned. Cory took it, plugged it into an offline laptop, and opened the only file inside. A video clip. The footage was timestamped, shot 3 months ago. It showed Evelyn standing on a balcony, arguing with Stephen. He was calm. She was furious. And then came the sound that froze them all. A slap. Loud. Sudden. Then Stephen's voice, low and threatening, "No one will believe you, Evelyn. You're too emotional. And I've been recording everything." The video ended. Evelyn backed away from the table as if it were burning her. He recorded that on his own phone. Why send it now? Malik frowned. Maybe he's trying to remind you what he has. Or maybe he slipped. Cory turned to her. He made a mistake. This is leverage. Evelyn looked like she couldn't breathe. He used to say I overreacted, she whispered. That I imagined things. And part of me believed it. Not anymore, Cory said gently. You have truth now. Proof. And he's running scared, Malik added. Why else send it? Evelyn looked up, and for the first time in days, something sharper than fear lit her eyes. Resolve. She nodded slowly. Then we use it. Cory leaned in. You ready to fight? Evelyn didn't blink. I was born fighting. I just forgot how loud I can be. Asterisk, what will Evelyn do with this explosive evidence? Find out on BUP Stories as the battle intensifies. Asterisk. The next morning, Evelyn stood alone in the garden behind her house, the early mist curling around her bare ankles as she stared out at the rose bushes. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the dew clung to each petal like it, too, was holding its breath. Inside, Cory and Malik were reviewing the footage again, frame by frame, looking for metadata, hidden markers, anything that could lead them to Stephen's network. But Evelyn needed air, needed stillness, the calm before whatever storm they were about to unleash. Her fingers drifted to the gold pendant resting on her collarbone. It had once belonged to her mother, a reminder of strength disguised in softness. She heard the door open behind her and turned slightly as Cory stepped onto the stone path. He was in a white t-shirt and jeans, barefoot, his body still waking up, but his eyes alert. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she said, voice hushed. "But I think I'm past the point of being afraid." Cory came to stand beside her, silent for a moment. "That video, it changed something in you." "No," she said. "It reminded me of who I used to be. Before Stephen turned everything into doubt, before he made me question my own mind." He looked at her, really looked at her, the faint line between her brows, the steadiness in her mouth. "I like this version of you," he said. "Not because she's strong, but because she knows it." Evelyn let out a breath. "Malik found something last night. A second account, offshore. It's deeper than we thought." Cory tensed. "He say anything?" "Only that it links back to a foundation Stephen set up 2 years ago, one supposedly for cancer research." Cory's jaw shifted. Of course. No one would question money going to a noble cause. "Except none of it did," Evelyn said. "Not a cent." Malik traced the funds, private flights, real estate in Miami, even a yacht lease. "Jesus," Cory muttered. They walked back inside together, and Malik was already standing by the dining room table, a tablet in hand. His tone was dry, but his eyes burned. "Your ex-husband's a special kind of arrogant," he said. "He's been funneling cash through a charity that doesn't technically exist, set up under a shell corp registered to a P.O. box in Montana." Evelyn folded her arms. "And we can prove it?" Malik nodded. "We can, but if we go public now, he'll counter before the story takes hold. We need a cleaner play. A controlled leak. Maybe through someone he can't intimidate." Cory frowned. "Like who?" Malik tapped the screen. A profile popped up, female, blonde, late 50s, sharp eyes even in a still photo. "Her name's Lisa Camden, former federal prosecutor turned investigative journalist. She's won awards for bringing down Wall Street predators, and she hates men who think money makes them invincible." Evelyn leaned in. "Can we trust her more than the courts?" "She's independent," Malik said. "Lives in Nevada now, works off-grid, doesn't publish unless she's airtight." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Set the meeting." Later that night, under dim lights and silence, they sat around the kitchen table as Malik dialed Lisa Camden's encrypted line. She answered on the third ring. "Malik," she said without pleasantries. "What have you got?" "I've got proof of a financial predator laundering millions under the guise of philanthropy and a survivor who's ready to speak." A pause. "Where?" "Pasadena, private residence. No cameras, no press." Another pause. "Then I'll be there in 12 hours. True to her word, Lisa Camden pulled up to Evelyn's house in a beat-up Suburban the next morning, dressed in jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that had clearly seen combat. She spoke little at first, just observed, took notes, let Evelyn tell her story in her own words. When Evelyn showed her the video, Stephen's slap, his voice, the threat, Lisa didn't blink. She only said, "This will be your shield and your sword." For 3 hours, Evelyn laid bare the past she had tried to bury, the control, the emotional gaslighting, the night she fled the penthouse in the rain with nothing but a duffel bag and a pair of keys. Lisa said little, but when she left, she shook Evelyn's hand with both of hers and said, "You've already won. The world just hasn't caught up yet." The next 3 days were a blur. Lisa began preparing a feature exposé, print and video. Malik continued tracking the offshore accounts. Cory, meanwhile, reinforced the property's security, set up cloud backups for all evidence, and took Evelyn's car in to replace the GPS in case Stephen had tapped it. On the fifth day, it happened. The front page of an independent news outlet hit the internet at 5:01 a.m. Hedge fund CEO under investigation for misuse of charity funds. New evidence suggests domestic abuse and financial exploitation. Within hours, it spread, picked up by online aggregators, trending on Twitter, then spilling into cable news. Stephen's team issued a denial by noon. By evening, his attorney filed a defamation lawsuit against Lisa Camden. But it was too late. Evelyn had already released the full video on her own terms, hosted on a neutral non-profit platform. No ads, no monetization, just truth. The public was with her. Messages flooded in: women, men, strangers who saw themselves in her silence. Some angry, some hopeful, all grateful. How will Stephen react to this public reckoning? Stay tuned with BUP Stories to see the fallout. That night, as the house finally quieted, Evelyn sat beside Cory on the couch, the same couch from the first photo, the one Stephen had used to shame her. "I don't know what comes next," she said quietly. "You don't have to," Cory replied. "You just have to breathe. And remember, he can't touch you now." She leaned into his shoulder, not in weakness, but in peace. For the first time in years, she didn't feel watched or owned or ashamed. She felt free. And outside, the wind shifted, not as a threat, but as something that had finally passed. The morning sun filtered softly through the linen curtains, casting golden stripes across the hardwood floor of Evelyn's living room. But despite the calm light, the air inside the house was tense, thick with expectation, like the hush before a final verdict. Cory stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee, eyes locked on his phone. Notifications flooded the screening: news alerts, calls from unlisted numbers, texts from journalists. He didn't answer any of them. Instead, he looked across the room where Evelyn sat at the table with Lisa Camden and Malik. Her back was straight, her jaw set with resolve. She wore a fitted navy blouse tucked into cream slacks, her hair swept into a low twist. Professional, polished, untouchable. Lisa clicked her pen and placed a folder on the table. "We pushed the second wave of documents an hour ago," Lisa said. "Detailed transfers, the Shell Corporation hierarchy, and emails between Stephen and his CFO discussing how to cook the books. This isn't just reputation damage anymore. It's criminal exposure." Evelyn didn't flinch. "And what's his next move?" "Desperation," Malik said, voice flat. "He'll try to intimidate, smear you, maybe even make a deal behind the scenes to bury it all." Lisa added, "He may try to settle, offer you hush money, pretend this is a misunderstanding." Cory finally spoke. "And what if he tries something else? Something dumber?" All eyes turned toward him. Malik raised an eyebrow. "You thinking he'd go physical?" Cory's lips pressed into a line. "I'm thinking he doesn't like losing. And people who feel entitled to win tend to lash out when their mask breaks." Evelyn stood, moving to the window, watching as a black sedan pulled slowly past the house before turning down the next street. She said nothing, but Cory noticed how her arms crossed tighter around her ribs. By late afternoon, her attorney called. "He offered a private settlement," she said after hanging up. $7 million. No press. All charges dropped if I sign a non-disclosure agreement." Lisa scoffed. "Classic move. He thinks your silence is still for sale." Evelyn's voice was quiet but firm. "Tell him he couldn't afford it." That evening, Evelyn and Cory walked the garden path behind the house. The grass was still soft with spring moisture. Birds chirped lazily in the branches overhead, and the scent of jasmine clung to the breeze. But Evelyn's mind wasn't in the garden. It was somewhere else, somewhere further back. "You know," she said suddenly, "there was a night 2 years ago when I almost left. I had my keys, a packed bag. I was wearing a gray sweater Stephen hated. I even got as far as the elevator." Cory looked at her sideways, but he didn't ask. She stopped walking. "But I went back up," she said. "Because I remembered we had a charity gala the next morning. I didn't want the staff to wonder. I didn't want people asking questions. Cory didn't interrupt. I thought keeping the image intact mattered more than getting out alive, she said, voice trembling. It's insane, isn't it? He stepped closer, gently brushing her hand with his. No, he said. It's human, and it wasn't your fault. She looked up at him. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. You were surviving, he said. And now you're winning. Before she could respond, Malik's voice echoed from the back door. You guys might want to come see this. Back inside, the television was tuned to a breaking news bulletin. Stephen's face filled the screen, puffy, cornered, his once commanding tone cracking under pressure. Allegations are completely false, he said, visibly sweating. I've spent my life building companies that help people. This is a coordinated smear campaign from a disgruntled ex. But it wasn't just a statement. The news banner beneath the video read, SEC launches official investigation into Emerson Holdings and Stephen M. Hart. Malik turned down the volume. Game's not over, but it's definitely started to flip. Asterisk, will Stephen's empire crumble under the weight of the truth? Don't miss the next twist on BUP Stories. Asterisk, that night, Evelyn received a voicemail. It was Stephen. Evelyn, it's me. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this will destroy both of us. You think these people care about the truth? They want blood, and you're giving them mine. Please call me back. Let's fix this before it's too late. She listened to the message twice, then hit delete. Then she turned to Cory and said, I want to see him. Cory stiffened. Why? Because he still thinks I'm scared of him, she said. And I need him to really know that I'm not. Lisa was hesitant. You sure? We've got all we need. You don't owe him anything. I'm not doing it for him, Evelyn said. I'm doing it for me. The next day, Evelyn met Stephen at his lawyer's office, neutral ground. Lisa went with her, standing back. Cory waited outside in the car, tense. Stephen entered the room looking like a man who had aged a decade overnight. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes betrayed him, darting, uncertain. He opened with false warmth. Evelyn, you look healthy. She said nothing, just stared at him. Look, he began, palms up, we both made mistakes, but this public campaign, it's beneath you. She finally spoke, tone level. You hit me, Stephen, on camera. You called me names I won't repeat. You funneled money away from real people in need to finance your ego. And you think the worst part is that people found out? He shifted, the mask slipping. Don't act like you were some kind of saint. I don't, she said. But I never hid behind money to feel like a man. He laughed bitterly. You're going to regret this. No, she said, rising. You are. She walked out, her heels clicking softly on the tile, each step a quiet act of power. Outside, Cory opened the car door. She climbed in beside him and closed her eyes. How'd it feel? He asked after a while. She looked over at him, a slow smile forming. Like setting down a weight I didn't know I was still carrying. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Hart felt like her name belonged to her again. It had been 3 days since Evelyn walked out of Stephen's lawyer's office, 3 days since she faced the man who once controlled everything in her world, her schedule, her voice, her fear, and watched him squirm like a child caught lying with cookie crumbs on his face. The story had gone national morning shows, podcasts, investigative features. Her photo appeared beside words like brave, whistleblower, and unbreakable. But Evelyn didn't bask in it. She remained quiet, still, almost like a woman relearning how to breathe without a hand around her throat. She sat now on the wraparound porch of her small but beautiful home, tucked just outside Asheville. The sun was dipping behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, leaving lavender streaks across the horizon. In her lap was a well-worn book of poetry her mother had given her on her 21st birthday. The corner pages were dog-eared, the spine cracked like an old leather saddle. Cory was a few feet away in the yard, replacing a fence panel that had been loose since winter. Sweat darkened his t-shirt across the shoulders, his forearms flexed as he drilled. Every now and then, he looked up, just to check if she was still there. She always was. When he finished, he joined her on the porch. "Fence is solid now," he said, taking a seat beside her. "No more raccoons messing with the trash." She smiled, soft. "They'll be disappointed." Cory looked out at the view. "You sure you want to stay here? Now that everything's out in the open, people might keep showing up. Reporters, strangers." "I'm not hiding anymore," she said. "If they want to knock, they can. Doesn't mean I have to answer." He nodded, then hesitated. "You know, I've been thinking." "Oh, I'm serious." He chuckled. "I'm not a rich man, Evelyn. I don't have connections or suits that cost more than my truck, but I know how to build things, fix what's broken, hold my word like it matters." She looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly with curiosity. "I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to stay, not just around. I want to stay with you, if you'll have me." Evelyn stared at him, not shocked, not breathless, but deeply, wholly present. Then she reached for his hand. "You're stronger than any man I've ever loved," she said softly. "But what matters more is you never made me feel smaller to prove it." They sat like that for a while, her thumb tracing idle circles on the back of his knuckles, the sky growing darker. Later that week, Evelyn did something unexpected. She agreed to one interview, just one. The journalist was an older woman, mid-60s, a retired NYT reporter who now ran a small podcast called Echoes of Truth. No flashy headlines, no spinning narratives, just stories told slow, soft, and honest. They met in a coffee shop near the courthouse where Evelyn had filed her last document against Stephen. "I'm not here to ask about the money," the journalist said, placing her recorder on the table. "Or the scandal. I want to ask you, about why you didn't break." Evelyn exhaled slowly, thought for a moment. "I did break," she said. "More times than I can count. I just never stayed broken." The woman nodded. "Was there a moment when you knew you'd win?" "No," Evelyn answered. "But there was a moment I knew I wouldn't keep losing." She went on to talk about the little things, how Cory never tried to save her, only stood by her side, how Lisa Camden gave her not just legal support but dignity, how Malik taught her that justice wasn't always loud, it was sometimes just about not backing down. When the podcast aired, it went viral not because of any explosive revelations, but because Evelyn Hart spoke like a woman who didn't know the world her pain, yet offered her strength anyway. "Justice," she said at one point, "isn't about getting back at someone. It's about standing up for yourself, even when no one's clapping. It's quiet. It's personal. But it's real." Weeks passed. Stephen's indictment came through. Evelyn didn't attend the hearing. She didn't need to. Instead, she visited the community center she had helped build with her settlement money, a modest, sunlit building with a painted mural of open hands and mountain peaks. Inside, children read books, old men played checkers, and women in recovery poured coffee for each other like communion. She was walking out when she noticed a small brass plaque near the door. It read, "The Hart Center for Renewal, built on courage, kept by community." Evelyn reached out and traced the letters with her fingertips. And for the first time in years, her chest didn't feel tight. On the drive home, Cory waited for her on the porch steps. He held up a bag of groceries like a trophy. "They had your favorite ice cream. Last one left. I fought off an old man for it." She laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. "I hope you didn't hit him." "No," he said, "but I did walk faster." As the stars began to bloom overhead, Evelyn leaned against Cory's shoulder, her fingers curling around his. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She paused, looked at the night sky, then whispered, "That I made it, and that I finally believe I deserve to." And with that, the quiet victory was complete, not with fireworks, not with fame, but with two hands held beneath the stars and a heart finally free. Thank you for joining Evelyn and Cory's journey on BUP Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories of strength and redemption.